Now let's get to Jimmy Gerum. He is the initiator of Leuchtturm ARD. He also produces feature films, After 5 in the Jungle, As Far as the Feet Feel Carried, and The Wall. This is where he was a production manager. He will present Leuchtturm ARD, which is a collaborative movement that wants to put pressure on public broadcasting to force it to fulfill its political educational mandate. And the goal is a media place of orientation that makes us become politically mature citizens and thus creates a humane, mindful, and grassroots society of the future that is based on democracy. And they also have a website which offers an introduction to a payment moratorium. Mr. Gerum, can you hear us? Perfect. Great. Unfortunately, you're mute. You're muted.
Thank you for the invitation. Hello.
So tell us what's happening here. And for months, many people, so for 2 years, many people have been saying, do we need the public broadcasters? Why do we pay for them? Because if we don't get anything but, false and misleading news and messages.
Well, you've just said so. The public institutions in general are effective. Unfortunately, or sadly, we watched this for decades, especially the public radio that we fund with over 8 million euros per year, that we got that taken from our hands. And that's the paradox in all of this, which had triggered us to finally demand our right that we can only do in a collective movement, because over the past years there have been approaches that the public broadcast is not contemporary or wrong, but as it was in the past 2 years, against human life, against any reason, the irrationality of this was not interested in anybody. That means the public broadcasting services are completely paralyzed, and especially in the time where we have excellent news portals on the internet. So our approach is to connect these two worlds, get the real, fake, capable, independent journalists. All the facts have to be put in the discourse, and this discourse is not allowed. And that is done by our own public broadcast services. That is something that we can't stand anymore, and we are going to fight against that.
Well, the destruction of the initial mandate. You said it a minute ago. There are opportunities indeed to get your hands on real information, but not on public broadcasters, but in alternative media. Do you really want to link this? Or do you want this journey to go somewhere else? So from my point of view, a system that is utterly destroyed, do you think we should repair it? Or do you think, fuck you, we do something new?
Well, this is a point of criticism, saying do away with all the public broadcast services, but we are rather on the side of a unification process, because we do see the extreme importance of a public radio service as it was originally intended. We need a point of orientation. That's why we're talking about a lighthouse initiative here, because we are in a frame, in the context of information that we can't trust on, where we don't have the competency to check up and verify it all. So we need competent journalists. And on the internet, there are independent journalists who have come forward because they don't believe in the public discourse anymore, and they are banned from that. And this is even, they call themselves public service and balanced, is really cheeky. And the process of unification, because there is only one way to talk about it. They say, people say, let's do our own 8 o'clock news, do something with crowdfunding. But we'll only reach our own people with that, those who are informed anyway and who want to go into the discourse. The independent scientists as well as the independent journalists, they all meet up on the internet, and for 2 years they have been discussing, and we never reach anybody out there. There's 80% of the people who are completely have no idea of what we're talking about here, and we can only do that by getting into the 8 o'clock news. As I have said in a rally on the streets, we have to make the 8 o'clock news to get on our sides. We pay them. That's why we have to work for us. We have to open the debate in space instead of closing it. Well, it's very undemocratic what we're seeing for the last 2 years.
Are you in touch with people from the public sphere who are prepared to talk? So from the public broadcasters who are prepared to talk, because we know there are quite a few insiders who know that we can't continue like that. I mean, they are really few and far in between who are prepared to, speak out.
Of course, that's a problem. We have a system of dependencies. The employees are controlled by fear, just as the general citizens are, with the same framing. But there are intense intentions to go for a whistleblower platform. There are some courageous people or retired reporters and editors who dare to share their criticism. But the reason why this is only a few is the systematic problem. We have a systemic problem of the legal system. Both pillars completely failed, and this is why we have to work on several levels if we want to stand a chance as civilians here. A very important point is that we also regionally and locally implement the world that we think of. We want to have a world of general benefit for everyone, and a liberated public service leading to discourse will only lead to a free democratic society, and that will lead to disempowerment of the international politics interests and the global corporates, and a focus on the people's interest. And we can do that in parallel to our work in freeing the broadcast services. We work with organizations like helper.org and Powerful Together Now. These are initiatives that work on local levels, on helping the people that are in distress now. And we have to find a new common sense here. And we expect the public broadcast services to foster this, to focus on the positive things of our society, and showing the pride in the development. Instead of that, we are alien controlled by people spending hundreds of billions. That is a status that has to be kicked out and finished, and we have been working for this for 3 months.
I'm confident that this will end this year. Of course, it's difficult to fix a date. You don't have a crystal ball. But I'm confident that we are really reaching the tipping point very quickly, and things will improve afterwards much better. But so that means the main approach is that one of the mandates which public broadcasters have is not just enlightenment, but it's also assistance. You mentioned common sense or public polity. Now, maybe it makes most sense to actually contact those people, if you can reach out them, who really need help. I mean, the vaccination victims, many people who are isolated, who are left alone, who feel they are the only ones in the world who are naked to the world, so to speak. You don't need to, look so far as to Shanghai, to the terrible situation. But, I mean, here we also had a similar situation with the older people who died in isolation. Their family members could not be present, and that's an extremely high price. Is that the foot in the door you want to get? I mean, is this what you say? This is the help, the assistance which can be preferred out, and where you reach out and say, look, the 40% who can still be reached, you can contact us, you can inform yourselves, get help.
Quite right, quite right. There's an initiative only for victims of children of the measures. We have to do exactly that. We have to connect the people with the psychologists, and we do not focus on profit, but we work for each other in our communities, at village levels, on quarter levels, in the cities. There's positive developments in all of this, and for the large strategic goal, there is a massive corporate that we're working against here. Although it belongs to us, they have bunkered themselves up, and we really have to set up a broad alliance, and the independent scientists have to get involved, just as the independent editors on the internet. We can only do it together, and we need the walkers in the night and the rallies on the streets, because their courage has inspired us. And it's still the villages, the cities are full with people who are protesting against this, and we all have to stand in for our rights now. And it's our responsibility. You quite rightly say that it's not everyone. Everyone knows what's going on. We don't know. Most of them don't know what we are discussing. They don't believe anything because they don't want to invest the time. And they have been framed in such a way that they can't help but watching that news and not watch the internet and not look at the internet. So we have to get out of the bubble. And we are working on doing that. Get into the live media and be discussed there.
Every time when I take a cab, and that's at least once or twice a week, so I always notice the cab drivers are really informed, and they don't specifically say, well, I watch the committee or watch Children's Health Defense, but they have other sources. Nonetheless, cab drivers don't know how dangerous this stuff is. They don't trust it, but they don't know how dangerous this is. And they don't know that in the final analysis, it's going to be either thumbs up or thumbs down on somebody's survival. And that's the kind of level of information we want to get to the reachable 40% still out there. What can we do specifically? Can any one of us do anything specifically in order to reach that goal?
The good thing is, we haven't just described this four-step way on our website to do for self-empowerment. And we have to get the courage to do that. We have to get that proceedings and saying we are not paying our fees anymore if that public service is not on our side and if it doesn't fulfill its contract. But the same way as we explain that there, we also explain of what did they not report over the past decades? Where did they misinform us? Many people don't know about that to the extent. And that means the website was built for enlightenment, for the way how to proceed it. Leuchtturm.ard.de is the German website. And the good thing, what we've installed is an independent community where we actually put into place that point where we want to be a point of focus for people who need help, and where psychologists can get into contact with victims and people can help each other. So this is something where on a regional level that is going on in every federal state, that's going to be carried on digitally, that we network and that we speak one language, because we have a right on this. And if we look into the history, and that's a great challenge to the public public services that there is no enlightenment. If we had reviewed 2014, we wouldn't have a Ukraine crisis now. And the same applies for the health crisis. We are not explained the things that are going on. This leads to escalation in any case. So we know that we have to go outside of the bubble. We have to be optimistic. We want to share joy and fun by helping each other, and we see that we are not powerless. That is the main message. We can do something.
And I think that's so great. Could I ask something?
Please go ahead.
Go ahead. You talk about reconciliation or unification, and I do think that, public broadcasters, if they worked the way they were supposed to work, then, of course, they make perfect sense. But I don't understand whether, when you're talking at people who are editors-in-chief of magazines, etc., and, they were led up the wrong track, or maybe even due to their own economic objectives because they wanted to remain in the system, whatever. So they're so entangled in this whole business. So with these people, is it similar? Same goes for judges. I mean, they act unconstitutionally in their rulings right now. So is it possible that we have the same people who are, turncoats? And then will be believable? Is it possible to work with these people in the same system? So it will be the same people reading different news, suddenly reading out the truth. And I'd have a difficult time in believing these people and, wondering whether they can be corrupted again. I think probably it should be other people.
Yes, that is an impression that one may have. Producer Schlesinger got an ultimatum. We want a dialogue with the delegation, and we want to test whether they are ready to talk. They are people who have families, and they know what happened over the past decades, and they know what happened over the past 2 years. And so the readiness to talk is the core point. And we also know that these people are influenced by international newsrooms. The journalists are not allowed to check other agencies that are contradicting the German the Western narrative. So we know the intensity of the effect, and we know that 100% of the many authors believe in 100% of what they write. They're not all blackmailed. They believe in it, and that is a mass psychologic hypnosis which is going on for years there, and that is why it's going to be interesting to see how that dialogue is going to take place. But we have to force them into a dialogue, and if the way is the target here, the objective, going there, and if we find out that crusted apparatus rather works against the civilians and likes to carry on promoting the war, losing all their humanity, then we will have to react to this as civilians. But I do still have hope that, because I say these are human beings, and I expect Mr. Schlesinger to look beyond the fence. I think she gets 500,000 euros per year to have a little bit of horizon. And if that horizon also means that she knows what the international press rooms did over the past decade.
I do hope that this will happen, indeed. I'm looking at the judiciary. I'm a better judge of the judiciary than the media, And in the judiciary, I think maybe 5%, and probably not more. That's my guesstimate. We have 5% who are prepared to put up a fight for the constitutional state. But this is still a mix of stupidity, blackmail, and corruption in the broader sense. You know, where you have blackmail, oh, if you don't play ball, your career is going to end. So stupidity, corruption, and blackmail is pervasive, is widespread. And I do doubt, or I do suspect that in the public broadcasters it's not different, because they had enough time to replace the leadership team and infiltrate even maybe also a few levels beneath the top level. So when I studied, it was clear the people who were about to become judges were the super, you know, well adapted, and it was clear it's part of the judiciary which is completely broke. Now it's like a cancer which has spread, and you have no longer anything left apart from the 5%. So do you think if that's the case with the media, it's enough, 5%?
Well, first of all, there are statistics on this. 5% is enough to change society. Our secret is that we have to remove our own Nazisms and fight in a single front line and look at the strategic goal that we want to have a platform of discourse, because we are an unpolitical movement. We don't want to fight about the political ideas. We want that quarrel to go on, the discussion to go on where it needs to, in a media platform for 8 billion people. And that's a guiding principle. And I have to say, we depend on the quality of the time. It's a historical movement, what has been going on for 3-4 months in the walks of the street. And if we could free our own broadcasting services, we are the 3 countries, Germany, Austria, and Switzerland are in the same position as we are, that we haven't affected broadcast services. And we depend on this historical change to take place now, and that the time is in our support. And that with that we'll get the power that has grown from the rallies in the streets in a weekly basis, and that they make it clear to the people who are responsibility that we are looking at the change they can't evade. That's the power that we have to develop, because it's 270,000 people now that have gathered. That is nothing. It's not enough. And it's our task really to form and to develop the ability to get the international interests who work with the same methods on media and networking. That is what we have to do with the same weapons. We are also networking now, and we will have to take a media platform to enlighten the people, to make us politically adult civilians, and that is our right, and we need that now. We'll have to fight and hope that 22 is the right year for it.
Yeah, it's the right year for this. I'm sure we will have the tipping point very soon. I'm firmly convinced. Well, you said a minute ago, if we were to note at Viviana's question, to note that they lost any semblance of humanity, then we need to draw consequences. And consequences would be a payment moratorium on the fees, public fees?
We've stopped paying anyway, because it's criminal what they're doing. We have filed a suit last week. We have made applications which we are sending out in thousands to all broadcasting services. More and more things are coming out on a daily basis, how the framing is done in the Ukraine crisis. So there's no way to look for a peace process if the citizens don't take over responsibility. And if they had lost all the rest of their humanity, if we had bio-robots here, if it were that bad, then we can only do the collective collective movement. We have to become so many, and you say 5%, 10%. It is more than that who know that nothing, not all is okay in Germany. And Germany is at the center of Europe, and Europe is affected here. The world is affected by this Western narrative, which has been nourished over the decades, not only for 2 years, in full violence, attacking the people in the different countries. And if we don't stand up now, then we are looking into a very bleak future. I don't believe in that. I believe in a bright future.
Well, I believe in a bright future too. And I think that's the most important thing that you're saying here. We need to make a contribution towards that. Either by coming up with an alternative to the public broadcasters or through a cooperation between both worlds. We need to make a contribution towards coming out of the depression, which unfortunately has captured many people. We shouldn't underestimate that. And we should become aware again of the fact that there is a reason to be happy in life, but not under these circumstances. And this is why we need to change the circumstances. You can definitely make a contribution to that. And you made headway. Did I understand that correctly? 270K in your movement?
270,000 people who stopped paying, and we want to be at least 1 million to really put pressure on them. But you've said something very important. Heart and brain have to go together in this. Of course, we have to have a strategy, but we have to put our heart into it. We have to be there for the people, and that is what is going to make the fun in it. That on the regional level, we've got great initiatives. Heart for People is being established now. So lots of initiatives that directly now take care of the worries of the people with the different concerns that they have. And that is something that we stand for, and where we can show that we take over responsibility, and by that show the privileged at the top what they should do. You don't have to have any good political education to understand if you don't pay the nurse more, something is wrong. That's not a health crisis if the nurses get the same money as 2 years ago. You don't need any political saviness about this. The people who take the decisions, who do not do that for the general benefit, not for the people, and we put up with this for much too long.
Well, I think what's so nice, quote unquote, in the crisis is that the counterparty. In Chinese, you have the same icon for crisis, opportunity. That's exactly the consolation. We have a crisis, but for the first time, it's a window of opportunity. Many people can wake up, and we witness this on a daily basis. Many people see what's going on. And also the strollers. There's more and more people taking to the streets and going on rallies. And now, suddenly it's become so blatantly obvious to people. I mean, in the olden days, you notice, sometimes something fishy, etc., with, incubator lie, Iraqi allegedly killing babies in incubators, and people knew this was a lie. But, the level of lies unveiled are incredible right now. The vaccinations, the activities that are a slap in the face of humanity, the breaches of constitutionality. And it's not just in any old banana republic, but it's right in the heart of our society, and everybody can see what's going on. So for the very first time, we have an opportunity to see that the reporting is wrong. And I mean, maybe in the olden days I was not quite as aware because I wasn't aware of the structure in the country. But suddenly now we have the window of opportunity for people to have an eye-opener. More and more people jump the bandwagon of this enlightenment and take the necessary consequences, no longer want to play ball. So they want to change the system. And another footnote, and when we talk about the fact that we need a different legal system, maybe different broadcasting system, then that doesn't mean we want to change the constitution or introduce a completely new jurisdiction or different laws, but it means we want to fix what's wrong with our system. After all, what's written in the constitution, and that we get this back.
It's very, very important that we are all aware that we are the people who stand up for democracy and the rule of law and the Constitution and defend this. And we do see that the other side is absolutely trying to destroy all this. And I hope with your help that will be explained to the people who are scared now and are in panic and do not know what to do. That has to be made clear to them. Maybe in your way, you, Mr. Gero, will reach the people. I hope so. And I hope that many more people will stop paying their fees for the broadcast services, because what they do produce until now is just bullshit. And by that, we've got a legal expertise by Professor Dr. Martin Schwab, not only looking into the public broadcasting services, but the mainstream media in general. This was created on the basis of the absurd framing of Wolfgang Wodak, Dr. Wodak, but that is a very, very sound basis for the overall rottenness of that system, all due to the fact that certain circles, in particular Bill and Melinda Gates Foundations, others as well, George Soros, with their massive amounts of money, confronting these mainstream media. Yes, I completely agree with Ms. Fischer that we have to be grateful for this crisis, because this escalation leads exactly to a process which will move us out of the dumbness of our life. And that is what we need to get into change. We need the courage of the people, and sometimes that's only possible by pain, unfortunately, and that has increased over the past 2 years. There are, in the broadest sense of the word, beyond the public broadcast services and mainstream media, on the side of the artists, do we have people who are ready to publicly speak out, or are they so afraid and that nobody is visible anymore? Well, the scaring is massive. There's very, very few people who are ready to step forward. It's not only the economic pressure, it's the psychological pressure as well, that people are excluded. This has nothing to do with free democratic basic values. This is an avoidance of discourse. This is just a shut-up policy everywhere, and everybody is grateful for every single person, like Ulrike Gero, who uses her common sense and shows it. If more people were doing this, things would be easier. And I hope that we get to that point in the next weeks and months, that more and more people get courage, even if they are economically dependent. This is about the future of our children. It is not about our present time and improving that. This is our future, what is at stake. And we see what they do in the East. Somebody says there's no peace in Europe without Russia. And there will never be. And as for the case that they have been provoking for 20 years, we'll get the return now. And if we as citizens don't stand up now, we're going to get even more power to these people over the next years, because with their digitalization, they get more and more means to do that. That's why the time has come to really take up on our responsibility.
Well, the destruction of the public discourse is probably the main problem. You mentioned it. Mass formation, Matthias Desmond, he is now known to many other people, especially Americans. Dr. Robert Malone, Peter McCullough quotes him. And then there's a second big problem. Apart from the mass formation, the psychoterror is the transport vector or the tool. Transportation vector is mainstream media, public broadcasting, most notably. Is there anyone? I think you answered the question. I mean, even if you can't. Is there anyone who is in a very prominent position who speaks to you and where you can say, well, there's still hope? Or do you think that those in exposed positions are beyond repair? I mean, Viviane is friends with somebody in high places, I think.
Where there is some word undercover, so to say, and the structure is encrusted and destroyed in many, many areas. It's the economic side, how to use 8 billion euros for such a coloss as times of today. That needs a reform itself. And on the different levels, there are different people who criticize that internal situation which we've had over the past years. At the moment, we are looking at a historical change that we need, and that the public service also takes over the political responsibility, not only for us as a company to be completely ruined, but I do hope that we have a zeitgeist here to help us. I hope that we head down a path which I do see that the movement grew a lot over the past 3 months, that we are just about to reach the main media. I see that journalists in the main media start to be more courageous. 2-3 months ago, I talked to people who said, I don't dare to do that. And there is incredible powers in the back going on, beyond the imagination of everyone. The academia, the universities, everybody's under pressure. That is not worth a democracy, what has been going on in the past years. But I've looked at geopolitics and history over the last 7 years, and that's why I know the last 150 years very detailed. Even if you look at the details over the last 150 years, you don't wonder why the situation developed as it did. And that's a great lack that the public radio never accompanied this, that they never criticized what was going on, but they went along with the power structures in the background. And by that, they have become less and less a fulfiller of their task to be there for the citizens. And now it looks like a historic change that is unthinkable, because we are so much used to the apertures that we are stuck in with. This is why I kick out a lot of things. There is no reconciliation. We all have to go to Den Haag. But we don't want to start a war here, and no civil war either. We want to have a peaceful future, and we have to to appeal that the scientists get out of their strings, like Professor Mull, who we work together with. Also, as far as the future broadcasting services are concerned, and at the Munich University, we worked out a book in a conference, how public services should be controlled by control and transparency, how to make that possible. And all of that is for the roundtable of the ARD, the German television prepared. And we're looking forward to the first discussions, and we see if there is some humanity left.
And that will be decisive. But I think you mentioned something that is very important, and that was already told us by other media or creative industry workers, the acceptance of the media workers. So of the mainstream, so we almost reach it. I mean, less people look at mainstream media and look for information elsewhere, not only since Corona. That means mainstream media were dying anyway, to put it that strongly. And I don't know who it was, but somebody told us on the committee there was a survey conducted a couple of years ago. Viviane will be able to give you the precise details. There was a study of a poll concerning how much do you trust mainstream media, and 88% of all people, it's a few years ago, had virtually no confidence in mainstream media. And then an agency came in and they saw it as a success. They said that 80% distrust in media was turned into 60%, and that predated Corona. I think now it's almost 100% distrust. But just because we're creature of habits, people play ball. But you have a huge potential with your movement, and everybody amongst us has a huge potential if you want to create a new public broadcasting company.
It surely is. This is really the weak point of these power structures, because the media are the key, especially the fact that we pay for them themselves. So we can't talk to the Spiegel, but we can talk to our own broadcasting services, and that's an important point, which are public. And of course, this is only a section of what you say. The Gutenberg University in Mainz has a study, a poll on media trust every year. And that's different figures. The first breakdown was in 2014, that people noticed that things are going wrong in the reporting, that the ARD is doing propaganda. That was pushed away with a lot of arrogance, and then they talked about 25% of the people who had lost the trust in the 8 o'clock news. And typical for a crisis in April 2020, the trust increased a lot because everybody wanted to know what was going on with Corona in 2020 April, and everybody watched the news. So there was an upward trend here quite clearly. That's the case, of course, but here we are working with media who have the information authority. And that is why I always say, don't concentrate on doing an alternative. We are in a bubble in the independent media. If we do our own news, we only get to the 20% or have a very, very slow growth potential. And we don't have potential and time for that. In our media, we need our media really to extend the information authority to 60 and 70%, informing these people with the discourse which does exist. People don't know that Mr. Bhakti has arguments. They don't know that Dr. Gunzer has arguments for what they say over the last decades. and the origin of the Ukraine crisis. The people are not informed, and it's dramatic. I have one of the leading media lawyers, and I talk to him, that I know from my time as a film producer. He has no idea. It's incredible. A media lawyer doesn't even know multipolar Rubicon newsrooms. He's never heard there's newsrooms in the internet. He doesn't know what all of that is. He's one of the leading lawyers in Munich. And so we are working in parallel worlds here. Incredible. And if you get into these other worlds.
Exactly. And that's why it's all the more important that, I mean, you always mention the group 60-70%, and maybe it's only 40% you can speak to if you think along the lines of Matthias Desmond. There's 30% you can't beyond reach. But it's worth putting up the fight for the others and become at least as loud and as visible so they have a port of call if they want amongst us. From my personal view, it's too tedious. It's a waste of time, mostly, to run after them. But if we become clear enough in our broadcast and in our message that we have something to offer, that you don't only can just get information, but you can also collaborate with us, then that proposition allows us to reach people. I think it's almost utopian, Mr. Gerum, but maybe it's not. We can reconcile both worlds. It's worth a try. Mr. Gerum, I agree.
It's worth a trial.
I want to say something. I think I really like it that we have the genesis of lots of media portal, and I don't believe that we don't need alternative broadcasts and news broadcasts. I think we need lots of them. I think it's you're doing an important step, and also in the advisory, because I think it creates a momentum, an awareness for the issues at stake, but on the other hand, we have an awful lot to lose. In the final analysis, it's one thing whether you take them to court, but losing the monopoly to interpret things, they lose everything.
Yes. They will lose everything, and of course also their own positions going on. And I could imagine that they will fight back until the end and try to carry on doing their thing. That has to be done in parallel, and it can be done in a way that the people who set up these alternatives will be integrated in some kind of public radio service and get support from there as well. So I think there can be synergies, but that we only depend on the public services to change course, I think that is difficult, but I think you're going down the right path here.
That's exactly the goal. We need people like Paul Schreier or Pullman in public broadcasting stations. So we need these top-notch journalists, and the fact that they're not given a voice is something that drives us crazy. And Sat1 was created, and it's just straight away economically successful. But if you look at the statistics, then we still remain in our bubble. And that's important for us to know if we want to reconcile our families. Brothers and sisters don't talk to each other because one of them watches mainstream, the others get information on the internet. And we can only break this up if we, gain access to the leading media. That's the shortest route, and therefore it's worthwhile. It's worthwhile focusing our efforts, and then, we need to wait and see in how far people are prepared to talk. But there's no room for compromise. But Rainer, you said it a minute ago, maybe people will fall back into their corrupt being or essence. But in that case, it wouldn't be possible because public broadcasters are public. You can watch them daily, what they do on the news. And transparency and control is an uncompromising request that we want to table now. And in that case, there will no longer be a debate that, there has to be a debate because discourse is not an option, it's mandatory. And,
that's the fundamental basis for all the democracy, free voicing of opinion. And that, first of all, has to be guaranteed in the public media. We pay for that, as you rightly said. And we didn't pay for propaganda being poured out over us in order to wage war. And that's what's going on. Okay, Mr. Guerin, thank you very much. I can only recommend everybody to stop paying and join that movement, Leuchtturm ARD, a joint movement already putting pressure on the public broadcasting services and maybe even leading to people from the public media to get over on our side. And maybe I think we can make a common thing out of that. We'll see.
We'll create a peaceful world. That has to happen.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Bye.